Mike,
Steve.
you know, while we're writing season 2 of The Last Resort, what we should really do with our times, we could discuss the characters' favourite movies.
Interesting concept, Steve, because I like movies and, well, you like movies and our characters like movies too.
Then it's settled. The Last Resort Movie Club is born. Hello and welcome to another episode of Bad Scripts. I'm Steve Jones and I'm joined as ever by Mr. Mike Garlier. Good evening, Mike. How you doing?
Hello, Steve. Are you enjoying this recent heat wave that we're experiencing right now?
Well, it's chucking it down with rain here, so there's not much sun to be had. It's pretty much I've been rain bathing all day. That's what I've been doing. So how about you? Is it you got some warm weather in Scotland then?
Welcome to the great British summer.
All 10 minutes.
We are experiencing a period of drought. Yeah, not much rain. Just intermittent clouds and some sunshine. It's, as they call up in Scotland, tap-off weather. I'm not going to try and do the accent. But no, we're experiencing quite a nice summer so far, and there's lots going on in the world of entertainment and sport. So, we are contributing to that. So, I am happy to report that I am still alive. Or at least staying alive.
Well, I like what you did there. This is turning into a brief weather show as well. It seems like the last 2 episodes we've had to regale everyone with our tales of the warm that we're experiencing, because it doesn't happen very often. So we celebrate it when we can.
This is 2 things, Steve. This is us extending our range, like Van Damme, and diversifying. So if there's any weather producers out there that think we have a nice voice to read said weather, then they give us a call.
That's always on for a pitch. I thought about that because there's a weather forecaster in Leicestershire. I heard her on the radio the other day when I was driving through, and she's the weather forecaster, and her name is Sarah Blizzard. I thought that's just, if ever a job was made for a woman, then that's it.
That's fortunate.
So last week we were looking at Dan's favourite movie, as you mentioned, the Van Damme classic Double Impact. And this week we're moving on to our temptress from the north, Kelly, and her favourite movie. So Mike, do you have your description of the movie as you had for us last week that tells us what the film's about?
Yes, I do. So to give some context around this film for people that haven't seen it, everyone is familiar with Saturday Night Fever. Everyone's heard of it. Everyone's heard the soundtrack. Everyone has danced to it at some point at a drunken Christmas party. Not many people, however, have seen the sequel that was made around 6 years later, which was called Staying Alive. And the only connection between Saturday Night Fever and Staying Alive is the fact that John Travolta's in it, and the song Staying Alive appears. So there's not really much more of a connection than that. Sorry, Steve.
So he's playing the same character.
So here is the synopsis for Staying Alive. This is what they sold it on. So again, Tony Manero is the main character in this, and Anthony does odd jobs to eke out a living and dreams about performing on Broadway. In the pursuit of his dreams, he inadvertently hurts his family and friends. And that's kind of the high-level concept of it. And it was released in July of 1983, directed, written, and produced by none other than Sylvester Stallone. Rocky himself did this film.
It is an incredible thing to think that a man at the height of his own acting fame would take a step back and be so involved in another project, especially a sequel to a really successful movie like Saturday Night Fever, and then be, a writer, director, producer. It was really a brainchild for him, I guess, to take this character and move him on. I guess the person we really need to hear from, though, is our friend north of the border from back in time. So let's just see if we can find the tape and hear what Kelly had to say about her favourite movie, Staying Alive.
Well, I'm here to talk about Staying Alive, and to talk about why it is my favourite movie. And the question I'll ask back is, why wouldn't it be my favourite movie? It is absolutely brilliant. It's got everything in it. It's got drama, it's got sex, and it's got lots and lots of dancing in it. Now, when I was a wee girl, my favourite film was Annie. And I loved that film all the way through growing up. And when I was about 13 years old, I was watching the television and I came across this film with the rather sexy, the rather juicy John Travolta wearing nothing but a pair of pants on a stage. And from that moment on, I was hooked. I went straight to the video shop, I rented a copy, and I wore out that tape. And I would say that I'm really inspired because it empowers women in that film to not apologise for shagging the blokes. And it empowers the main character, Tony Manero, to truly be himself, even though not many people like him. And I feel a rather kinship to that's me on both sides of the coin. I can be a lassie and I can do what I want, but I can also live out my dreams. And I really wanted to be a performer, and that inspired me as a wee girl, and it's been my favourite film forever. And I watch it at least 10 times a year. I love Staying Alive.
Wow, so that was Kelly's thoughts on the movie. Well, I can kind of see from that why she associated herself so much with that. And I guess, Mike, we need to start right at the beginning of this movie and kind of dive into the script, because it starts with the pace on this thing is so up and down. It's frantic and then it's calm, and then it's frantic and then it's calm, all the while with an undertone of absolute pure aggression the whole way through the movie. I noticed something that really hit me was that right at the beginning, when he leaves the audition, right at the beginning when we had the credits, he leaves the audition, and there's a moment where you think this is the Tony I know from Saturday Night Fever. He starts to strut down the street, but within 3 seconds, he stops. The strut stops, the music stops being funky, and he becomes more introverted because he's not succeeding at this dream. You know, he's just auditioned. You don't know. You know, it's been 5 years since the first movie. In the story, he's moved from his family home. He's moved up to Manhattan to try and make it. And he kind of switches off. That swagger for a second is there, and then he boom, and it disappears. And that really was poignant for me. I thought that was definitely intentional. That you saw a flicker of this character that you knew, but then he was a bit downbeat with it all, a little bit disenchanted with it. And that swagger was there, but then it just fades. And that is until he bumps into somebody in the shoulder, someone we might recognise.
Yeah, so this is Stallone doing his little cameo in it, wearing the weirdest donkey jacket thing. It's really strange. He's got these kind of big dark glasses on, and it's
like a fur coat, wasn't it?
Turns and looks right at the camera. Yeah, it's really strange. A really crowded street as well. That's his little nods to Hitchcock, because Hitchcock used to always do cameos in his films. He was famous for it, and it was like spot the cameo. And I think Stallone just wanted to get in there, and then we never see Stallone again. He's obviously behind the camera, and it's clear he's had a huge impact on the shape of this film, given how John Travolta actually looks. I think he's probably the most ripped he's ever been in his entire life. Very lean as well. But just before can we take it back one step, if that's okay? Because as you said, the film lands really quickly with this massive, intense scene on a stage with lots of dancers all giving it everything they're worth, and the director looks about it looks like he's going to lose his mind throughout, or for some reason he's really angry, and all these dancers are sweaty and hairy.
I'm going to say that very choreographer that you were talking about there, the angry and intense one, actually played the main bad guy in RoboCop, and the dad from that '70s show. Kurtwood Smith is the actor. So he just appears, doesn't say anything in the entire movie, but just appears as a choreographer at the beginning, looking very intense and moody. And you kind of think, where did that come from?
He looks stressed. I think it's to create mood. But anyway, what took my attention away itself was the actual dance routine, because it's like dun 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 dun. Now I've written out the routine, and I would like, with your permission, to read this routine to give the listeners a visual of how these guys are dancing on this stage. Is that okay to be able to do that?
Yeah, I think. Go for it. Let's hear So you're going to read out the steps that they do. So are our audience going to understand what those steps are? Are they descriptive enough that we can do it? If not, they can look them up.
Now, I'm using my terms. I'm not going to use dancing terms here. I have literally translated what I've seen on the screen, because what I will say is as well, and I've never really seen it before or since, there is a lot of shoulder thrusting going on in this in the whole film. Actually, every dance routine is a lot of shoulder thrusting. Rolling shoulders and kind of moody stares. So let me go through the steps with you, right? And if you keep this beat in your head while you're listening, like dun 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 dun, you'll get a sense of how it's going and the kind of energy and the pace it's going at. So this is everyone on the stage. They all turn and they give their best moody stare. And this is John Travolta giving a really good moody stare. There's a shoulder thrust, a squat, flips hair back, water sprays everywhere. Moody stare, double turn, hawk eagle arms out, forward on 3, gazelle leap, and then to the floor. Moody stare, floppy head, flappy head, 2, 3, 4. Now crazy hands, look angry and do crazy hands in a circle. Walk forward, eagle arms out, cue title, and then massive dancer montage with loads of moody staring. It's like everyone is angry.
And that's a theme that goes through the rest of the entire film. Everybody in this film, and I mean everybody without exception, is incredibly angry. In fact, the whole of New York in this movie is incredibly angry. Everyone's flipping each other off. Everybody's just the most aggressive I've ever seen a film, ever. So much testosterone.
So there really is, and in the dance montage, I've just broken down into 6 main moves, right? So if you ever watch this film, you look out for these moves. Move number 1, as I said, is moody stares. Moody stares are really, really big. Number 2, there is a lot of gazelle leaping going on. A lot of kind of like flying forward, gazelle style leaping. There's a lot of crazy hands. It's kind of, if you imagine what I mean by crazy hands, it's putting your hands in the beside where your ears are, and then doing this weird flappy thing.
A bit like Tragedy, Bee Gees' Tragedy.
Yeah, a lot of it like that, so with crazy flapping that's going on. Like they're trying to ruffle their own hair, but they do it in circles and stuff like that, in squares. There's a lot of eagle poses happening as well, which is kind of arms outstretched to the side, head up in the air. There's a lot of butt wriggling going on as well. There's quite a bit of arse wriggling, both male and female. And then loads and loads of head flapping, because everyone's got mullets and long hair. And it's all really, really sweaty and hairy, right? There's water and sweat spraying everywhere. But you can tell from the way the camera is on John Travolta, he wants it really hard. He wants it so bad because of the stare he's given. He is giving such an intense stare. And he doesn't get it. And then what is after that, he's just unceremoniously told, no, it's not you. And he's the only one that walks out and he's really angry. And again, that's the theme that goes through it. And then he's on the street and John Travolta, he runs into Sylvester Stallone in his little cameo. And that kind of introduces us to the film, Staying Alive. He goes straight to Fatima's dance school, where he seemingly works as well.
Oh, yeah.
And then has a little flirtation with who I can assume is Fatima.
Yeah. He does say her name, yeah.
He does mention her. He does, and he also mentions her, how would we describe it, her appendages?
Her breasticles, yes.
Which I don't know whether... I don't know where that came from or why, but he does kind of like go, hey, nice boobs. Like, thank you.
It was a different time, rather like our script.
Well, She said, "You're late," and rather than saying, "I had an audition," he said, "Hey, but I'm here now. Nice boobs." And then we're introduced at the same time. No, then I think we're getting close to being introduced to his love interest. And then next minute he goes to the bar. Yeah.
Yeah. So that bar, that nightclub that they're in, and like I say, it's it's very different. I think the juxtaposition between what he'd been used to and where he was now, like I say, it was a lot more casually dressed people. But again, even the people he worked with behind the bar, the barman, were so aggressive and so angry. And like, you've got some friends over there, so there's a couple of girls, so it's obviously still womanizing. Because let's not forget, people think of Saturday Night Fever as this almost a musical, this film about disco and pop. If you actually watch it, it's quite a dark movie. There's so many different themes that get to the
He's in a gang.
He's in a gang. There's talk of abortion and all sorts. It's a really dark movie. It's sort of a bit of a reflection of how this guy who lives a really mundane life comes alive at night when he goes to a disco. That's basically where he exists. So when we take it to this new level in this sequel, and he's now a waiter, he's not even everyone else is going and dancing, having fun. He's trying to get through these people carrying trays of drinks, and you see him getting frustrated as the drink gets knocked out of his hands. And like I say, his colleague, the barman, really aggressive with him when he says, "Were you going to give me those girls over their number?" And he's like, "Oh no, I don't feel like it." He's like, starts shouting and swearing at him. So it's just crazy.
If you notice that the only interactions he ever has with the customers are the women either coming on to him or referring to some kind of previous time they've had, and he said, and I think there was two women that were quite aggressive, and they were like, "You're coming back to ours, what time do you finish?" It was like 3 a.m. and wait, you're coming back, and he was like, "What, after last time? No way," or some, so obviously they'd done a bit of a number on him, but there was all these really weird interactions, and I've got to call out a couple of things. Throughout the film, we never see Fatima's dance school again.
No.
And we never see the nightclub again.
No. It's like you go and see these little elements of his life, but then he moves on, and it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter about that. The pace of this movie, I could not make head nor tail of it. It made it difficult because it was so intense and fast-paced when we were in any of the dance scenes. There was nothing, so many shots, especially later on in the film, so many cut shots, so many flashing lights. It was difficult to see what was actually happening. But the main thing that confused me from that moment, you was talking about the girls that he was talking to, and the sort of assumption that they were in like a menage a trois, was that then the next shot you see him, he's waking up in the morning in bed with another woman, and you're like, sorry, what? So did he go back with them? But then that turns out that's
Jackie.
Yeah, that's Jackie. But we've not been introduced to Jackie before. Then
lovely Jackie.
It is the lovely Jackie who.
There was a line actually. There was a line that I wrote down that one of the women say to him, and she says, "Guys like you aren't relationships, you're exercise."
I think that's exactly what he thinks as well. I think it's a reciprocal thing. I think that's a lot of what Kelly sees as, she obviously was very influenced by this, and her behaviour was somewhat driven by this kind of, you know what, you're sport to me. You're a bit of fun, and I'm not going to take it seriously. I'm not going to fall for you because I'm not going to get hurt. And so, yeah, then Tony moves on. It's this thing, he moves on and he ends up in this, waking up the next day. So we don't really see where he is. So is he in his own apartment? Is he in what was her name? Jennifer's apartment? Jackie.
So there's some really weird things. Yeah, there's some really weird things that happen. So Jackie sings in a band with Sylvester Stallone's brother, Frank Stallone, who plays Carl. He's the guitar player. So she sings in a band, but she also seems to be in the nightclub as well, and she's also in Fatima's dance club. and she's also at the same auditions and stage show that Tony Manero's at. So there's a really weird thing going on where she just turns up anyway. Now, if anyone hasn't seen the film, you will definitely know who the actress is. It's Cynthia Rhodes, who played, was it Debbie in Dirty Dancing?
She was the character who became pregnant and requires the abortion that Baby helps to arrange. She was also
so she plays this.
She was also in Flashdance as well. So don't forget. Yeah, so she's done a lot of dance movies during the that period. But she played Penny. It was in Dirty Dancing.
Penny. I'm so glad. If I'd got that right, I would have admitted that I know the characters of Dirty Dancing. So I'm so glad.
It was just me
with that one.
Yeah. Did you know that she was married for about 25 years? She was married to Richard Marx, the singer. So a little factoid for you there. So she wakes up in his bed.
No, he's in her bed. He doesn't seem to have a home.
He lives in that hotel, doesn't he? Where he goes in and says, "You got any messages?" And then he comes back out. Got any messages?
The Hotel Cecil. Yeah.
It does look very much like that.
Right. The only time we ever see him in his apartment, it does look horrible. Yeah, but right, and I know we're jumping ahead here, right? But all the residents seem to hang out in the lobby watching telly.
Yeah, I mean, who wants to hang out? I mean, they've obviously got nowhere else to go, and that's the only warm and dry place they can hang out. But it does hark back to a time again where you're waiting for a phone call at a payphone, because back then people didn't have mobile phones, and a lot of people didn't have phones that were private. They had to use a single phone in an apartment building where they'd stand there and wait for someone to come. Nobody answer their phone, like he does. But yeah, and that was us flipping forward a little bit. But yeah, so he has this relationship, this really weird relationship
with this relationship with Jackie, and we're not quite sure what that relationship is. It doesn't really. I mean, it's not labelled. They're kind of together, and she just seems to take everything he throws at her, really, with just a bit of a smile and a wink. And I think there's a point where she does call him out, but she's just. Do we think Jackie's too nice?
She's a bit of a wet blanket with it. It's obvious that she's madly in love with him. But he treats her as, well, if nothing better else comes along and it gets to 2 a.m., I'm just going to turn up at your house and do it. And he has no qualms in just picking her up and dropping her as frequently as he likes. He's making no commitment to her, despite being when he's with her, he's quite romantic with her, and they kiss and they cuddle. It's not just a transactional sexual thing. There tends to be genuine affection. I think he does care for her, but he's always on the lookout for something better or the next lay, or it just feels very, as we said, aggressive, predatory.
Yeah, I think that there was a few things here. So we were introduced to Jackie, and I don't know about you, but I felt Travolta played it really, really smugly, but without any aim. He was kind of aimless. He was, you could say that he was so fixated on becoming this big Broadway dancer, because then there's this massive kind of monologue of scenes where he's going around agencies and trying to sign them up and saying some really crazy things to them as well. And there was one thing he said in particular, I don't know if you picked up on this. He said, "I don't do nudity. I promised my mother, because she would kill me. I've got to wear clothes." Did you pick up on that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's something. We know with your history that you don't have those same qualms. So I think for that might be difficult for you to contemplate. But I think he genuinely, he does care for his mother quite intensely. He comes from that kind of Italian background. His mother was quite religious and believed that you shouldn't do these things, which makes the later on in the movie seem a little bit weird how happy she is about the film, the show he ends up in. And I think we've got to remember that he's doing that bit for her as a little.
He rings her up And the very first thing she says, she goes, "Tony," and he's like, "I've got a job, Mum. You better have your clothes on. You better not be taking your clothes off." So that was like literally, and it was like almost a nod to the camera there to say, "See, I told you. You know, I've been saying all of this," which, as you were saying, is ironic given that he's on stage in just a loincloth at the end. Literally, just a loincloth.
Yeah. And his mum was, she's the one that's facilitated him being able to go out and follow his dreams. She, in the first movie, she's the one that sort of stimulates him to try and that. And he obviously loves her very much. But again, it's very transactional, everything for him. He goes back with a reason behind it. He goes to see his mum because he's got nowhere else to go, and because he needs to, and he uses everybody. I mean, the confidence levels of all of the characters in this, I think, apart from Jackie, I think everybody else is so confident all the time and so aggressive all the time. It's really tiring to endure and watch. Nobody's just normal. Everybody's just so driven. In all of the auditions and all of the dance rehearsals, we start to see him start to go and try and he actually goes to watch Jackie in her show, and that's where he first spots the British dancer who he takes a shine to, and I think
Laura.
Yeah, and what was her surname? Do you remember?
I don't know her surname. I just know her as Laura.
Schwarzenegger. That was the name. Called her Miss Schwarzenegger. So you have to wonder if Stallone was going, yeah. When they say 5 minutes and they do the calls, yeah, and they're like, 5 minutes, Miss Schwarzenegger. I was like, oh, I see what he was doing there. So, yeah, that was
wow.
That was quite a call out.
That's all.
Yeah.
Good catch.
Yeah. It's incredible.
Well,
incredible.
He gave Laura. So not only does he just kind of barge into her dressing room, and she's kind of sitting there, and she's obviously someone of worth, and she's the star of the show. And he does this little flirtation thing with her. He gives her the best, or probably the worst chat-up line I've ever heard in my life. When he asks her out, and she says something about, "Oh, maybe," and he said, "I'd have to cancel my brain operation." Is what he said to her, and she laughs like it's the funniest thing in the world, and he just feels really good about himself for that.
Well, I think it's because he was a bit. That's the first time we see him show any vulnerability is when he's flirting with her, because he sees her up on this pedestal, and so this Laura, he sees her up there, and he's trying to chat her up, but he knows she's kind of almost unattainable. But he's been so lucky with women in the past. This is a weird territory for him. So he kind of fluffs it up the first time. And when he comes back and goes, that's why he sort of says, I gotta cancel my brain operation, like he's a bit mental and he's not really all there. And that's why his chat lines weren't landing, first of all. It's bizarre. It really is.
He's not there the whole film. He looks like a lunatic most of it, to be honest with you. And some of the choices he's obviously made, I think he talks through his teeth. Like, he doesn't seem to open his mouth when he talks. Although, I'm not one to say anything like that. So he has this one night stand with Laura, and then,
well, that's skipping it.
The rest of the film is really him not being able to take that rejection.
Yeah, I think the tables really get turned on him, because this is something he's done for a long time, was use women for his own purposes. We know that. We know he does that. We see him do it with Jackie. We see him the way he has been with these other women, and in the previous movie, that he very much sees these things as, this is for me to get my end away and what have you. So when it happens to him, he does not like it, and he doesn't deal with it very well. But I think it leaves a question in his mind when he does get the part in the movie that he then auditions, in the Broadway show that he then auditions for. Part of you says, did she put a word in there? Did she sort of, because he'd said, no, don't put a word in for me at the audition when he mentions he's a dancer. So he wants to do it off his own back. But then when she does see him dancing, does he then, go, oh, well, it's... I think he might be worth getting in.
100%.
Yeah. Now
100%. She's put a word through because there's a long kind of dance segment, where there's lots of montages of dancing, and Travolta's there, and he gets, he gets through the audition. She had a part to play in that, and if you saw, was it the scene afterwards? What do we make of that scene where they're in the underground car park? I mean, he doesn't have any reason to be there. He doesn't drive, but he does turn up there, and so does Laura, and they have this kind of interaction with each other.
Yeah, I think that's just after the audition's finished. He's seen her there, so he sort of follows out to where she was. I think the thing that got me in that, just skipping back to that audition process, was the one thing I noticed was, again, another really angry choreographer who looked like this is gonna, right. This is what I noticed straight away. So, for anybody who doesn't know who this gentleman is, he looks a bit like Noel Edmonds if Noel Edmonds had joined the Gestapo, because he had a long black leather coat and a walking stick, and I thought, you genuinely looks like he might be in the SS here. I'm not quite sure what's going on. And then we hear the title of the Broadway production that they're going to be making. And I mean, for anybody who's ever seen the more recent film Tropic Thunder, with Robert Downey Jr. and Steve Coogan, to name but a few, they do a segment in that film, a little fake advert for a movie with Tobey Maguire, about two monks who have a love that dare not speak its name, and that's called Satan's Alley, which is obviously a slang term. And that's what this Broadway show is called, Satan's Alley. Now, I cannot think that they weren't basically pissing themselves with laughing as they titled that when they were writing the story. Let's call it Satan's Alley. Who's commissioning on Broadway a show that basically is a slang term for an anus? I mean, what was going through people's minds at that point?
I don't know if that was a slang term back then, or whether the slang term came from the Broadway show of Satan's Alley. I would say that the show needs no introduction, nor do we get one, because it does not explain what the show is, nor with the fact that for some reason the show is completely sold out. And it's got the biggest and brightest and richest all coming to watch it for no reason whatsoever.
It's on.
Well, I can't tell you what it's about apart from.
It's a strange one because I've seen some shows on the West End. I've not been to Broadway. Most of them had at least one bit of speech or maybe a song in it. This was pure dance, 100% interpretive dance, as you might say. It was genuinely the strangest show. It had no explanation in it. And so I think we're just interpreting some sort of, like you say, the loincloth made it feel like there was some sort of religious symbolism to it all. There was gimps, there were demons, there was fire and hell. Nobody knows what was going on in it. But he got the part, didn't he? Like you said, he got the part in the show.
There was a lot of gimps.
He gets this part because he's hanging around waiting by that phone that we were talking about, and he gets the part, so he's going to be in sort of the chorus of this West End show, which is, that's the first step towards his dream. And that's when, like you say, he rings his mum to tell her, and she's like, "Yay, great!" And he's like, "I'm buying you a ticket. It's $26," which 1983 or whenever this was, that was a lot of money for a theatre ticket at that time, for a guy that's, busting tables and working in a dance school. But he wants his mama to be proud of him. He wants to show her that he can succeed doing the things he's done, even if it means being extremely aggressive and having a constant state of sweaty lycra and testosterone dripping from his body constantly. One thing I did notice that, when he gets asked out on a date later on by Laura, she says, come up to the thing, we're having a bit of a party, come and join us. He's wearing a white suit when he does that. Now, are we to assume, because he's not made of money, he's not rich, that might be the famous suit from Saturday Night Fever? Now, he's wearing a different kind of shirt because it's now the 80s and what have you. But do you think that there was a real sense of purpose behind his white suit for the party? And when he goes and he isn't the centre of attention and he doesn't get what he wants, to really
I think it's just a nod back to. I think it's just a little wink to Saturday Night Fever, because he doesn't. It's not exactly the same white suit. He doesn't have the big lapels and stuff like that. It's slightly different, and he wears like I suppose what would you call it? A kind of pastel blue T-shirt. It's a very Miami Vice. I think it's part of that, very 80s.
But yeah, like you say, I think there's definitely a nod to the Tony that was back in the day. So, this weird thing that goes on then. So he's got this part in the chorus, and we see in the rehearsals, again, very aggressive and angry people everywhere. And it just makes you wonder why anybody would want to be in this profession, because everybody's just so grumpy all the time. Nobody's having any fun. And the guy that they've cast as the main male lead seems to be pretty crap at doing what he's doing.
Bruno. His name's Bruno. And he has flappy hands. And he's not showing enough aggression. So Jesse is the guy you're talking about, the director, and he only ever wears leather. So he wears high shoulder pad leather coats the entire time, despite the fact it's probably 90 degrees on that stage. And he's always on the stage. But yeah, Bruno is the other guy. I don't know if you picked up on this as well, actually. I thought it was quite funny. I didn't know whether it was a joke, it just didn't land right. But in the lobby, when he gets the call to tell him that he's got the show, he screams. He looks like a lunatic. He's talking away from himself. The phone rings. He screams, "Turn the radio down." And the radio's in his own hand. And then he turns it down. Did you notice that?
I think it was a kind of I think it was that frantic moment of turn the radio, then he realises he's got it in his hand and turns it down. Yeah, absolutely. I think there was a little bit of like...
Yeah. And there was something else I've really got to say as well. So Laura invites him to this party, as you said, and then Laura is seen flirting with Jesse, the director, and Tony doesn't like this at all. And then a follow-on scene is they have a bit of an argument in the corridor, and I think it's just I think Laura's playing with Tony a little bit. She's just toying with him. That scene was really similar to the argument that Adam and Kelly had in Last Resort. I don't know if you picked up on that.
Yes, I think, and it's strange because we didn't have this in mind when we did it, when we wrote that scene. But yes, there was very much a case of it got very aggressive and very blame, orientated at that point. So yeah, I think there was a definite mirroring there that kind of happened, but unintentionally, of course. And I think that sort of motivates him even more
as well. That he does. So he yeah, and but he goes home to see his mum because he needs a pick-me-up and a piece of pie. And he seems to walk home from New York to wherever she lives. He just seems to walk there. But there was this really strange scene where he talks to his mum, and basically what he's saying in a nutshell is, should I change my ways, or is it okay to be a dick? And she says, Tony, you've always been a bit of a dick. So just accept the fact you're a dick. And he's like, yeah, okay. And then he eats some pie. And it just felt really weird to say, you're never going to change. You are who you are. You've always been like this. But you are genuinely a bit of a dick.
So the walk home thing, he was only going for... So he'd moved to Manhattan, hadn't he? Yeah. But he was only from the Bronx. So he could walk to his mum's house. So it wasn't like... But then that made me think, well, why then are you living in Manhattan? Why don't you just get the train into Manhattan each day? You know, why are you struggling to afford to live in this tiny hotel? That's a shithole. When you could actually just get the A train, you'd be like, I'll be into the city in no time. I didn't quite catch why he'd moved there. I mean, whether it's just to soak up that environment or what have you, to make his own way in the world, but it did seem a little bit weird. And secondly, the pie his mum had made was in a foil container. So either she was lying to him and she'd bought the pie at the store and was passing it off as her own, or she had foil containers. I mean, it's a perfect possibility, but it did look a little bit dubious to me. Like she was...
I don't know about you, but it always felt that Tony just had somewhere else to be. He never really wanted to be where he was at that moment in time. Did you know, like, that was a running theme throughout the whole film, is wherever he is, he's going to go somewhere else for some reason. And that's what I mean by aimless. He just doesn't fit anywhere at all. And he doesn't seem to like the company of other people unless he's kind of doing something with them.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when you look at, we don't really know what his goal is, right? So what does he want to do? Does he want to be the lead in a Broadway show? Does he want to have a career in Broadway just in general? Is he wanting to move on and become a choreographer? We've got no idea of his ambitions because there's basically not really any narrative here. It's just a case of we drop in on his life for this period. And, you know, he then decides that he thinks that Bruno's shit and speaks to to Jackie and says, look, I'm going to try and speak to the director. Will you rehearse with me these parts? So he's going to practice and they do yet again another montage of dancing, you know, getting better with each take. You know, it turns into some sort of
super slow-mo. Super slow-mo.
And the other thing then as well that got me was they finished this rehearsal that they do in the early hours of the morning. After she's finished singing at the bar, he convinces her to come and rehearse with him. Now, you finished rehearsals, right? It's 2 a.m, you're going home. They walked out of there with freshly styled hair, and I'm talking 80s hair, back-combed hair, sprayed the lot. Are you really going to go to that effort just to go home to live in your skanky hotel? Or are you just going to put a hat on and walk home and not bother?
It's the 80s. It's the 80s. And I did write that. One of my notes was 80s excess. Everything was just bigger and larger than life as well. Now, I must apologise to you, Steve, because it's not Bruno. Bruno's a character from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. No, Bruno's a character from The Witches, actually. It was Butler. Butler is the dancer. Now, Butler is known. I don't know if you picked up. You probably did see this, and I've got to say it right now. He's going to kill me if I don't say it. He was wearing full-sized mantards throughout the entire film,
like a unitard,
full-on Ali G. The Borat style. Yeah, he like the whole lot. He was not caring. He was not giving two shits, and he wore that the entire film. There were red ones and green ones.
I also noticed that there was no jock straps either, which was a concern to me. If you're dancing in lycra and you're not wearing a jock strap, there is definitely, from a man who's had injuries in these areas, I warn you, it is not a safe thing to do. Always wear protection, guys out there. If you're going to be dancing in your unitard, wear protection.
But then a weird thing happens. So he takes his chance for the lead of the show, and he does a bit of dancing with Laura, who's the star of the show, and then he kind of throws his toys out the pram, and then starts getting angry with the angry director. So them two are now angry at each other for what is no reason whatsoever. Do you understand what was going on then?
I think it was just the spoiled little kid that Tony still was coming out, because he knew that routine, right? And then he messes it up when they first do it. And instead of going, oh no, I can do it, he goes, moo, and then storms out, and the director comes out and goes along the lines of, you've got to want it. You just got to go out there and do it. Stop being a little bitch. And then it's like, moo. But then he does come back in, and Butler's out again. And he goes, oh, I hate you, Butler.
Butler is gone. So there was some interesting music in this one, I've got to say as well. And Moody Girl was the super slow-mo. It was called Moody Girl, the song. But the main song they do in the show, they play this song over and over and over. And it only has 2 words in it, which is fire and dance. But it's it's fire, dum, 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 dance, dum, 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 fire. And it's just, honestly, it was driving me nuts having to listen to it. Yeah, shoulder thrust, fire dance, monkey hands. But it was over and over and over again.
Do you know what got me was that they've gone, well, this is a sequel, and the first one was full of Bee Gees songs. Can we put Bee Gees songs in this one? But we can't really afford them, so can we have ones no one's ever heard of or will ever have heard of again? And the rest we'll get my brother to write and sing in the show as well.
Yes, so there were two Bee Gees songs appearing in it, which is not the title song that the Bee Gees wrote for the film, and the rest of it was Frank Stallone, who played Carl, the guitar, and had one line in the film, one word in it.
There was a brief moment where he turns up with Cynthia, doesn't he, to the dance studio, and again, there's this weird thing with Tony where, sorry, Cynthia the actress, I'm thinking. So Jackie comes to meet him, but yeah, always. And he'd invited her to come because he's let her down so many times, but he expects her to be there promptly whenever he wants her or wherever he needs her. Yeah, he drops her at the drop of a hat, you know. And she's late and she turns up to try and show him a lesson. She turns up with Carl, you know, to make him jealous, really. But Carl's not like fawning all over her. And then Tony gets really aggressive with him, like, "Ooh, I don't like the way he is with you." Ooh. And it's like, but that's exactly how you are with her. Why are you so angry about him, who seems to be a nice guy looking out for her, and you're being the dick, Tony? And I can't help but feel that for our protagonist, he's not exactly someone that we like.
He's not likable in any way. I don't think there's just enough redemption about him. And so the whole of the third act of this film was the show Satan's Alley. The whole third act. So that's a long time to be listening to Fire and Dance. And that's what you were talking about earlier. It's suddenly... there's lots of flapping bodies. There's lots of snake hips going on. Lots of eagle leaps and stuff. And it got really strange. It got like this big mental bondage scene with gimps flying around and everything, flying around, crawling around. Lots of contortionists going on, and him running about in a loincloth.
And his mum is sat in the audience, and I think at first she doesn't know what to make of it. She's like, "What?" And then she's like, "Yay!" And I couldn't make out.
Talking to other people, he's going, "That's my son. He can dance."
Yeah, but what I couldn't understand is that they kept ending scenes or acts, and then it was like, oh, is it supposed to be another show, another day, like the same show but another day, or is this all on the one night? But no, it was all on the one night. This montage went on forever, and then there's this weird bit where Laura gets angry and scratches him on the face because he kisses her. And I'm like, what's going on? I don't understand what is going on. It just blew my mind. Because at this point, he's decided that him and Jackie...
To him later says, "Oh,
yeah, and he apologizes. She does apologize to him, like you say, but he's already agreed with Jackie that he wants to make a go of it and have a relationship with her. So he's not trying to do anything other than do it for the show. But I don't know whether it's supposed to be jealousy or what that makes him kiss her. I don't know what the motivation for the kiss was.
Listen, it's a Sylvester Stallone film. There's going to be some blood at some point. We needed to see some blood just for that brutality of it. I don't know if the kiss was in the show. I think that was Travolta. Oh, sorry, the character Tony Manero getting his own back on the star of the show to take some of that power back. And then because Jackie even mentions it, and she was like, "Oh, well, you gave her a kiss. That's okay because you love me." And I'm like, you are going to end. This relationship is going to end with your heart broken if you continue down this.
Oh.
So I didn't get that. So let me ask you a question, Steve. Right, you have spent years trying to make it onto Broadway. You have auditioned on auditions. You finally get the lead role in a mental musical called Satan's Alley. What do you do? Do you stick to the choreography, or do you go rogue?
Well, you'd think, I've got this opportunity now, so I'm going to do this to the best of my ability. Or do you push a woman over and start freestyling in the middle of the show on the opening night and not get a complete bollocking from the choreographer who spent probably years perfecting this show to get it right to put out there, and he just decides to do whatever he wants to do? A question I did have for you: what do you think was the headband budget on this show? Because there was a lot of money spent on headbands throughout this entire movie, but in this show, every single member of the cast had a headband on. It was like they'd got some left over from Rambo, and Stallone went, "Well, we'll just stick him in this film I'm making now. See how we go from there."
The answer to that is because everyone in the cast had a mullet, male and female, they all had the same haircut. Every one of them. So as you say, he steals a solo. The leather-clad director, he even says, I never gave you a solo. And Travolta's like, well, what are you going to do about it? I'm on stage now, and I'm going to be the talk of Broadway, and everyone's going to tip their hats to me. And he continued, well, this solo comprises of gazelle leaps, spins, and head flapping is the best thing I could do. And then he does this jump and this something else. And then it's show over. And Laura, now having seen him in all his glory, wants him again. In the space of, like, what was it, a 90-minute show, a 2-hour show? So they've gone through the whole rigmarole of I don't like you, now I like you again, no, I don't like you, and then you've kissed me and I've scratched you in the face, and then I like you again, and oh yeah, I wouldn't mind a bit of that. In just that, absolutely crazy.
Yeah, 100%. And when you look at, then he goes back to Jackie again. He's like, and she's like, so you've done it. You've made it on Broadway. I mean, bear in mind, they've just finished the first performance, so we've not even seen what the reviews are saying. People turn out and go, what? Yeah, what is this batshit crazy show with lots of people strutting around doing gazelle leaps and shoulder thrusts and pointing their groins at the audience? I think it lasts about a week before it got shut down. But it's just the line, probably the last line of the movie, when she asks him, what do you want to do? Can you remember what he says?
Strut.
Yes, he just wants to strut. And then we get the same iconic scene from Saturday Night Fever right at the beginning as he walks down the street to the song Staying Alive and struts off into the distance. And that's it. Fade to black. The film ends.
Strut.
And there's no kind of like...
That's exactly what we're saying. He's done the show. Yeah, there's no kind of like after show party and everyone getting together. It is all about him. And what does he want to do? He's going to go somewhere else. We don't know where he's going. We don't know where he's walking. He's just going to strut that booty down the road to the song to Staying Alive, which I think is where all the budget went on. It went on the last song at the very end.
And they could only use about 30 seconds of it as well, I think, from the right at the very end. It just went, oh, well, yeah, we've done that. We've run out of that. I guess we've sort of run through the story there. What are your thoughts on it then as a movie? What is your... How would you rate this? We did this rating last week. So out of 5 gazelle leaps, what are you going to give this?
Out of 5 gazelle leaps, I'm going to give this a 1.5. It was a tough watch. It was tough to get through it. And I think it hasn't aged particularly well. And again, it's just one of those... excess, story's not making sense. If I was to describe to you what Satan's Alley is, I would have to say it's like if they turned Mad Max into a dance musical. That's what I'm taking away from that one. And it 1.5 gazelle leaps for me.
1.5. Well, that's fair enough. I think for me, nostalgia gave me. I'm going to give it 2 shoulder thrusts. Because I just think for the nostalgia, for the fact that we had, some original songs in there, and they did. Cynthia sang, as did Frank. They sang with their own voices, so that was nice. And I got through the movie, but it could have been so much better. It was pretty poor, so it got. I'm being generous by giving it 2.
Don't get me wrong, Steve. I've got to call out Jackie, the actress who plays Cynthia. I thought she was the best thing in it. I thought she was absolutely brilliant, very believable, especially on conveying the love to Tony. I thought she was absolutely mega. I really did. And I cannot fault her. And I actually thought she's so sweet and so nice. But like I said, he's not going to be right for her. And Frank should step in.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to agree.
I have a question for you, Steve, at the end of that. So my question for you is this. Can you see why that's Kelly's favourite film? Why do you think that is?
Well, 100%. I think she said it herself. It was about, especially with a character like Laura, who, bear in mind, it was the early 80s, was extremely sexually dominant. She knew what she wanted, and she went and she got it. And that, I think, is a big thing for some people. If they've brought up in a background where it's very, very male dominated, and she saw a strong, powerful woman who went out there, got what she wanted, and didn't give two hoots about it. That may very well have given her aspirations for her own behaviour. So I can 100% see why something like that would have influenced her and given her the confidence that she has. Because if you look at our script, even when she's being called all sorts of names, she doesn't shrink, she doesn't fade, she just gets more aggressive. And I think that's perfectly summed up in this movie.
I absolutely think you're spot on. So there we go, Staying Alive, Kelly's favourite film, as read by us, in terms of rediscussing it. I don't think it's a review, I think it's just a rediscussion of it.
Yeah.
You enjoyed that?
Yeah, absolutely. Next week, well, that's going to be a little surprise. You're going to have to look out on the social media. We're going to be putting out who our character is and what the film is. For next week's episode, we will be discussing that later on. But for now, we're going to...
Are we doing the secret reveal now?
Yeah, well, I think it is. We'll let people know. So they're going to join us on our Instagram or our Twitter feeds. On Twitter, we're at ScriptsBad, and on Instagram, we are at Bad Scripts. Let's take just a minute before we leave everybody, just to say a big thank you to some of our friends, supporters, and partners out there. So again, a big tip of the hat to Be More Super, the podcast. They've had some great guests on there recently. It's been a real enjoyable listen. But also another one to friend of the show and many times sponsor, bleedingmarvelous.com, who've got some awesome tiki mugs and things coming. I don't know if you've seen those.
Yeah, I think they look absolutely fantastic. I'm going to get me one of those as well. And I'd also like to give a little silent shout out to Alison, who admitted to me this week that Staying Alive she's watched 8 billion times. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, Alison.
Yeah, thank you to anybody that has endured this movie to join us and listen along, review along, because we realise that may have been an ordeal for people to do. We promise that the next one will be a little bit more fun, and we'll be bringing that to you next week. So from myself and from Mike, we hope you've had a fantastic time with us, and join us next time on the Last Resort Movie Club.
Fire!
Dance! Bad Scripts was written and performed by Mike Garlia and Steve Jones, a Beach Tide production.